Imagine a beloved creator, like the kind of artist who makes the world's most empathetic, wholesome family films.
Right, the ones everyone grows up watching.
Exactly. You picture this person, and your mind probably goes straight to, I don't know, a cuddly, magical grandfather figure.
Yeah, a quintessential gentle storyteller.
Someone dispensing wisdom and warmth, maybe sketching a friendly woodland creature by a fireplace.
It's like a real-life Santa Claus of animation.
Right. But then you dig into our sources and you find out that this same man's own son publicly gave him 0 marks as a father.
Wow. 0 marks.
Yeah, literally 0. And you discover he is a lifelong vocal pacifist, yet he harbors this intense obsession with deadly wool planes.
Which is such a massive contradiction.
It really is. You realize you are looking at a walking contradiction.
Oh.
So today we are stepping into the incredibly complex, relentless, and fiercely opinionated world of Hayao Miyazaki.
Co-founder of Studio Ghibli, legendary animator, and, well, perhaps the most demanding perfectionist the medium has ever seen.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to look past the magical aesthetics of his movies to understand the deeply complicated human being who actually created them.
Because the public perception of Miyazaki as this sweet, grandfatherly artist is just a stark contrast to the reality.
Oh, completely. The real Miyazaki is this union-leading, politically outspoken force of nature. And to understand how a mind like that develops, we have to look at the environment that forged him.
Yeah, his early life provides like a raw blueprint for everything that followed. He was born in 1941 in Tokyo City, which means his earliest cognitive memories are quite literally of a bombed-out Japan.
Wait, 1941? So he was just a toddler during the worst of it?
Exactly. When he was just 3 and 4 years old, his family had to evacuate to Utsunomiya and then to Kanuma, fleeing the aerial bombings.
I mean, seeing entire cities leveled by fire at age 4, that leaves a permanent psychological scar on anyone.
Absolutely.
But our sources highlight a really confusing dynamic for him growing up because his family wasn't destitute during this post-war period. They were actually quite well off.
Right, and the source of that wealth really haunted him later. His father was the director of a company called Miyazaki Airplane.
Making airplane parts.
Yeah, they manufactured the rudders for Zero fighter planes during World War II.
Oh, wow.
So young Hayao grew up in relative comfort, but that comfort was directly funded by the machinery of war. He later admitted to feeling a profound, lifelong guilt over his family, profiting from the conflict.
That is heavy.
It is. He hates the war, but he is surrounded by and financially benefiting from the aviation technology that fought it.
So you have a kid internalizing a massive amount of guilt regarding his privilege, and that privilege didn't even protect him from tragedy inside the home.
No, not at all.
Because from 1947 to 1955, his mother, Yoshiko, suffered from severe spinal tuberculosis.
For almost a decade, she was in and out of hospitals and largely bedridden.
That must have completely upended the household dynamic.
It did. Miyazaki and his brothers had to take over domestic duties. But his mother was not a passive figure in all this.
Right. Our sources describe her as strict, highly intellectual, and someone who regularly questioned socially accepted norms.
Exactly. She debated her sons and demanded mental rigor from them. She really refused to be defined by her illness.
And added to all of that, Miyazaki himself was a very sickly child. He suffered from severe digestive issues. Doctors actually told him he wouldn't live past the age of 20.
Which is just crazy to think about now.
Right. He felt clumsy, weak, and completely out of place in his own body. When you lay all of that out, it is as if his childhood was the raw, unedited rough draft for his movies.
Oh, for sure.
You have the sick mother, the shadow of a devastating war, and this intense obsession with flight as a form of physical escapism.
And those traumas translated literally into the text of his masterpieces.
Yeah.
I mean, the fear and uncertainty surrounding a hospitalized mother is the exact emotional core of My Neighbor Totoro.
Yes.
And his mother's fierce intellectual personality is the clear inspiration for the strong, anti-damsel-in-distress heroines he is so famous for.
Characters like the pirate captain Dola in the Puda Castle in the Sky.
Exactly. Or the resilient Sophie in Howl's Moving Castle. He once noted that his mom had 4 boys, and none of them dared oppose her.
That's amazing. So his physical weakness and his need for escapism pushed him toward art. He discovers he isn't great at drawing people initially, so he draws planes, tanks, and battleships.
Machines of massive power.
Right, drawn by a kid who feels entirely powerless.
Yeah.
But eventually he sets his sights on the professional animation industry. And you might assume he walked into this, magical wonderland of creativity.
You think so?
But instead, he walked into a grueling, soul-crushing factory system.
Yeah. The Japanese animation industry in the early 1960s was entirely focused on churning out volume. In 1963, Miyazaki joined Toei Animation.
Okay, set the scene for us. What was that like?
To give you a sense of the economics, he lived in a tiny apartment where rent was 6,000 yen, and his starting salary was only 19,500 yen. He was hired as an in-between artist.
Okay, let's break down what an in-between artist actually does, because it sounds incredibly tedious.
It is the definition of tedious. So in traditional animation, a senior animator draws the main keyframes, like the start and end points of an action.
Okay.
The in-between artist has to draw the dozens of frames connecting those 2 points to create the illusion of fluid motion.
Oh, man, so you're just filling in the gaps all day.
Exactly. It is repetitive, grueling assembly line work that offers almost zero creative input. For a young artist bursting with original worlds in his head, it felt like being put in a straitjacket.
But he didn't just quietly accept the conditions, did he?
No, he started organizing.
This is fascinating to me. By 1964, he was the chief secretary of the company's labor union. We have this romanticized image of the lone genius artist painting by candlelight, but his real superpower early on was his willingness to fight management and organize his fellow workers.
Yeah, organizing that union was the crucible for his professional identity. It was also where he formed a lifelong collaboration with Isao Takahata.
Who was the vice chairman of the union, right?
Right. They bonded over this shared belief that workers deserved rights and creative autonomy. Miyazaki developed a deeply held philosophy during this time that a company is common property of the people that work there.
He really refused to view himself as a disposable cog in an executive's machine.
And that defiance defined his entire career. When executives put up roadblocks, he just found a way around them.
Like the Pippi Longstocking pitch. He and Takahata wanted to adapt it. They actually traveled to Sweden to secure the rights, which was Miyazaki's first trip overseas, by the way.
Right, but the author rejects him.
But instead of giving up, he strips the project down, salvages the best ideas, and repurposes them into the Panda. Go Panda! Animated shorts.
Because his pragmatism is just as strong as his imagination. We see the ultimate example of this in the early 1980s. Miyazaki wanted to direct his own original anime films.
Okay.
But the studio executives were incredibly risk-averse. Their financial model dictated that they would only fund an animated movie if it was based on an existing popular manga comic.
Oh, I see. It was a closed loop designed to guarantee an audience, so how did he break the loop?
He essentially manufactured his own intellectual property. He realized that if they needed a manga, he would just have to make one.
Just do it himself.
Yep. He sat down and wrote and drew Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind himself. He drew it primarily in pencil, printed in a distinct sepia-toned ink. It was a massive undertaking, but it worked.
The manga sold millions of copies, right?
Millions, which generated the built-in audience the executives required. That success directly justified and funded the 1984 film adaptation.
He literally forced the studio's hand by doing the work himself. That hard-won independence is what culminated in the creation of Studio Ghibli in 1985, alongside Takahata and producer Toshio Suzuki.
Exactly.
But gaining independence from local studio executives is one thing. Protecting his art on the global stage proved to be an entirely different battle.
The stakes were suddenly monumental. It is worth noting that Studio Ghibli wasn't an overnight financial juggernaut. Yeah, early, critically acclaimed films like Laputa Castle in the Sky and My Neighbor Totoro were only modest box office hits initially.
Wait, Totoro wasn't a huge hit right away?
Not at the box office. In fact, it was the explosive sales of the stuffed Totoro merchandise that financially stabilized the studio in its early years.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. But the real turning point for his protective nature happened right before Ghibli was officially founded. In 1985, his film Nausicaa was licensed for a U.S. release. But the American distributors didn't just dub it, they completely butchered it.
They released it under the title Warriors of the Wind. And the distributors fundamentally misunderstood the film.
What did they do to it?
They carved out nearly 30 minutes of runtime.
30 minutes?
Yeah. They erased crucial character development, completely stripped away the complex environmental themes, and tried to repackage it as a generic, fast-paced action cartoon.
It is like an immunological response. The American release introduced a destructive virus into his art, and his response was to build an impenetrable firewall around Studio Ghibli. He and Takahata refused to allow Western releases of their films for a decade after that disaster.
10 years. They walked away from massive global profits for 10 years simply to protect the integrity of the work.
That is dedication.
So when Disney finally comes knocking in 1996 to negotiate a massive global distribution deal, Miyazaki's stance is fully calcified.
This was for Princess Mononoke, which was the most expensive Japanese animated film ever made at that time. Miramax, handling the North American release for Disney, pushed to make cuts to secure a lower age rating than PG-13.
Right, they wanted it to be more family-friendly.
So what happened?
Studio Ghibli famously sent a Japanese sword in the mail to the Miramax executive with a simple two-word message attached.
What did it say?
No cuts.
Oh my gosh, just a sword and no cuts.
Yeah, and they held their ground. Miyazaki proved that uncompromising, mature, ecologically complex animation could dominate the box office entirely on its own terms.
And his insistence on controlling the art extended to the actual mechanics of animation, too. During the Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away era, the global industry was pivoting hard toward computer graphics.
CGI was faster and cheaper, but Miyazaki viewed early CGI as floaty and weightless. He believed that the physical pressure of a pencil on paper transferred a human soul into the art.
So he just rejected it entirely.
That entirely. He did allow CGI in Princess Mononoke specifically to map out the writhing, unnatural flesh of the demon boar because it needed to look alien.
Oh, that makes sense.
But he strictly enforced a rule that digital elements must make up less than 10% of the film.
Miyazaki's insistence on absolute, unyielding control over his films wasn't just a business strategy, though. It was a direct manifestation of his worldview. He exerted total control over his art because he felt so powerless to control the violence and shallow commercialism of the real world.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Let's look at his ideology, because our sources highlight some incredibly intense political and social stances.
Our sources indicate he applies the exact same uncompromising rigidity to global politics and industry trends as he does to his frame rates. For example, he holds a deep-seated anger toward military conflict.
Right.
When Spirited Away won the Academy Award in 2003, making him a global household name, he boycotted the ceremony in Hollywood.
He didn't even go.
Nope. He later clarified that he simply didn't want to visit a country that was bombing Iraq.
And that anger bled directly into his next project, Howl's Moving Castle, which features a devastating, senseless war that destroys beautiful landscapes. And he is equally critical of his own country's government, right? We want to report this impartially, but what exactly did the sources say?
Correct. He has publicly and heavily criticized Japanese politicians, specifically taking aim at efforts to revise Japan's pacifist constitution, the clause that outlaws war as a means to settle international disputes. He actually labeled those political attempts despicable. He has also used his platform to urge Japan to offer proper, unequivocal apologies for its aggression and atrocities committed during World War II.
But this brings us to the ultimate Miyazaki contradiction, the warplane.
Yes.
Because in 2013, he writes and directs The Wind Rises. It is a gorgeous, melancholic, loving biography of Jiro Horikoshi, the aeronautical engineer who designed the Lethal Zero fighter plane used by Japan in World War II.
It's a complex film.
How does a staunch pacifist spend years meticulously animating a love letter to a machine that killed thousands of people? Wait, is he letting himself off the hook? He hates war, but he fetishizes the machinery for it. Isn't that exactly the kind of obsession he criticizes in younger animators?
It is a profound philosophical tension. But Miyazaki was inspired by a specific quote from Horikoshi, which was, "All I wanted to do is to make something beautiful." Miyazaki recognizes the tragic purity of engineering and creation. He believes that a creator can design something elegant and beautiful, completely detached from malice, even while knowing that humanity will inevitably corrupt it and use it for destruction.
Oh, I see. So the tragedy isn't the machine itself. The tragedy is humanity's application of it.
Exactly.
He really holds the world to such impossibly high standards, and he directs that exact same critical fury at his own industry. He is famous for despising otaku culture.
Right. And to understand his critique, we need to define otaku. In Japan, the term generally refers to an obsessive fandom, often centered around anime, manga, and video games. It describes a subculture that prefers to retreat into fictional, 2D worlds rather than engage with the complexities of reality.
The paradox is that his movies are the foundation for a lot of that fandom. Yet he claims that modern Japanese animation is produced by people who can't stand looking at other humans.
He argues that if an animator only watches other anime, their art becomes shallow, like a copy of a copy. He believes you cannot animate the weight of a person walking or the subtle shift in a facial expression if you don't spend your life observing actual humans interacting in the real world.
Which perfectly explains his volcanic reaction to artificial intelligence. In 2016, a tech team presented him with some AI-generated animation of a zombie-like creature moving grotesquely across a screen.
And the team thought they were showing him a technological breakthrough.
But it didn't go well.
Not at all. Instead, Miyazaki told them the grotesque movements reminded him of a disabled friend who struggled to high-five him. He told the programmers that whoever created this AI has no idea what pain is.
Wow.
He actually called the presentation utterly disgusting and an insult to life itself. For Miyazaki, animation must contain a human soul. It must understand physical pain, joy, and gravity.
He demands absolute humanity in his art. But the heartbreaking reality we found in these sources is the cost of that demand. Holding the world, his industry, and his art to such uncompromising standards made him a global icon. But the human cost of that relentless perfectionism fell squarely on the people living under his own roof.
Yeah, the sacrifices made in his personal life form the most tragic irony of the story. Early in his career, he married Akemi Ota, a highly skilled fellow animator.
Okay.
When they got married, they made a promise to each other that they would both continue working and pursuing their art after having children.
But the reality of the animation industry and his complete consumption by it made that impossible.
Yeah. After their son Goro was born, Miyazaki would drop him off at preschool. But one day, Miyazaki saw how utterly exhausted his young son was while walking home. Miyazaki decided the dual working parent lifestyle was breaking their child.
So what happened?
So, in 1972, Akemi reluctantly quit her career to stay home and raise the kids. She sacrificed her art entirely so that he could focus unreservedly on his.
And even with her managing the home, he was largely absent, right? He essentially lived at the studio. Years later, his son Goro delivered a quote that is just devastating to read. He stated publicly that his father gets 0 marks as a father, but full marks as a director of animated films.
It's hard to hear. But Miyazaki has admitted to this failing. He acknowledged that he wasn't a good parent and felt he owed his son an apology.
Well, the damage was done.
The emotional distance between them was so vast that Goro admitted he actually watched his father's movies just to try and understand him, because they rarely communicated at home.
It paints such a heavy picture. Think of Miyazaki as a massive lighthouse. He beams this incredible guiding warmth, magic, and empathy out to millions of people lost in the dark. But the space immediately underneath the lighthouse, his own family, is left entirely in the shadows.
That is a perfect analogy. And the tension with his son didn't resolve when Goro reached adulthood. In fact, it spilled over into the workplace.
How so?
Well, in 2006, Goro was tapped to direct the Ghibli film, Tales from Earthsea. Miyazaki actively and publicly opposed his son's appointment, believing he just wasn't ready.
His own son?
Yeah, and during a screening of Goro's film, Miyazaki coldly remarked, "You shouldn't make a picture based on your emotions."
Telling an artist not to make a picture based on their emotions is incredibly brutal, especially coming from a father to a son.
He did eventually send a message to Goro saying, "It was made honestly, so it was good." But the standard he demands is just suffocating. And the truth is, Miyazaki simply cannot stop.
Right. He's retired, like a half dozen times?
He has announced his retirement, dissolved production teams, and then returned to making films multiple times.
Most recently, he won another Academy Award at age 83 for The Boy and the Heron. Producer Toshio Suzuki basically admitted that they can no longer convince him to retire. The man still goes to the office every single day. He quite literally cannot walk away from the drafting table.
The man who taught the world how to understand the magical innocence of childhood and the deep, complex bonds of family had to sacrifice his own family dynamic to achieve it.
We've tracked an incredible journey today. From a sickly child in a bombed-out city drawing airplanes because he felt powerless, to a scrappy union organizer fighting the studio system for a fair wage.
To an uncompromising artistic titan who flat-out refused to let foreign executives carve up his films, and in doing so, alter the landscape of global cinema.
Looking closely at these sources really changes how we should view his work. We often turn to Miyazaki's films for comfort. We want to escape the harshness of our daily lives, float away on a cat bus, or live in a moving castle.
But for Miyazaki himself, these films were never designed as escapism. They are pleas for observation. They are about looking at the world incredibly closely, respecting the terrifying power of nature, and enduring the pain of existence.
Exactly. You can't create magic if you haven't first understood the reality right in front of you. But there is a lingering thought from our research that is hard to shake for you, the listener, to mull over. Studio Ghibli is inextricably tied to Miyazaki's singular, uncompromising genius.
Right.
He demands such perfection that he actively suppressed his own son's early directing efforts and has notoriously struggled to mentor a true, lasting successor. The provocative question isn't just what happens to animation when Miyazaki finally retires for good, it's whether a genius of this magnitude is ultimately the creator of a sustainable legacy, or if he is a massive, beautiful dead end that can never be replicated.